West Show.
Hey, you're here because we're going to talk about your new book that just came out last Thursday, and the one that was supposed to come out before Thursday, but that's cool because last time that's what you said in the podcast. But how much of the was that due to the COVID lockdowns, the delay on the book coming out, or?
Nah, I think it was more perfection, man. There's
Yeah.
had to rewrite the story, not completely, but there are just elements of that story that just wasn't happy with, and just, you write it, you rub it out, you write it, you rub it out. And I'm not talking about the whole thing, but there were just sections in there that that just needed a more simpler way of portraying that particular part of the story. Illustration wise, I think there were some challenges in that. Not that Thomas, who illustrated it, made any errors, but it was just making sure that the angle was right. The types of things that were in these illustrations was authentic to an islander experience growing up. And so so the storyline is maybe something we can go into later, but yeah, so no real delays due to COVID, but probably more just I probably overestimated how quickly we could get it done because I had done 2 already. Thankfully humbled, so to just make sure I get it right, because last thing you want is just to push out, some $2 shop looking book, when it's a story that's really important.
Yeah. So, can you just tell us a little about the new book, the name and what it's about?
Yeah, book is called Ofeata Ma, or Where's Dad? And it's about a character. Her name's Ayafi, who's maybe 5 or 6 years old. In the first page, her dad's kneeling by her bedside praying because he's off to work early in the morning, well before she even wakes up. And so she wakes up and does the normal routine of getting to school, having breakfast, and saying goodbye to her grandma and grandpa. He's at school. And then even after school, it's just mum that's there, right? And she's expecting him to come home, but, receives a phone call, from her dad, that he's been asked to do overtime. And so, she's anticipating him to be home, but he's got to pull another shift. And so he won't be back till, early the next morning. And so she's a little bit disappointed after this phone call. And I guess this is the peak of the story, is that she asks her mum, why does, where's dad, or how come he works so much? So the mum, kindly explains that, that because of how hard, her dad works, they get to enjoy the lifestyle that they have. They get to have a roof over their heads and get to eat what they have, each meal, and, all the bills and things are taken care of, because he works so hard. And I think, the reason why that story was important to me is because I think it's a common story, that we've, come across, whether it's our own father, or it's us as fathers, or it's an uncle or granddad that we've seen who just pulls these kind of shifts. And they only do it because of their obligation, and responsibility to provide for their children. And so towards the end of the book, the father comes home. It's 5:15, and it's a Saturday now, and she has her Ripper rugby game, in the morning, and he's only going to get 2 hours sleep before he has to get up again to take her to her game. And these are the last couple, 2 or 3 pages where he's fine, wakes her up, and they head off to her Ripper rugby game. And, and this is, what our fathers go through, they operate, and I'm not talking about every day, but there's some shifts, they haven't slept the whole night, or, they've done a whole night shift and still do the school run in the morning and do things that need to be done, or more the vow, or whatever it is. And it's just to honor them. Only because, firstly, I haven't seen a story like that, and secondly, it's authentic to us. It's an experience that, that as second generation Samoans here, we've only just seen that, in our fathers or men that we're around. So, yeah, man, that's kind of, just a quick overview of of the book, and the happy ending is that she gets to enjoy being with her dad the rest of the weekend. And so, yeah, man, that's the background of the story.
That's cool, man. Because I remember, like, when I was young, because my dad, he used to work a graveyard shift, and my mum, she worked during the day. So they sort of had to swap times with me and my sisters and that. So my dad will come home early in the morning after work, and he'll make us breakfast and take us to school. And then he'll come back home and go sleep while my mum's at work. And then, he'll wake up and pick us up from school, and he'll get ready for work. And then, my mum will be back from work from her daytime shift. So, yeah, man, it's a real common thing. Eh? It's did you have that same experience growing up with your parents?
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
My old man drove taxis for 20 plus years. And I remember, he didn't work for like one of those famous taxi companies. It's one of those ones where you just had to try and find work either along the street or wait in those ranks. And I remember vividly, man, like, this is when we were young, like, it would be deep into the night, and obviously back then there were no cell phones. And my mum would have to call the taxi company to send a message to Cab 42. This Cab 42 is my old man's cab, to tell him to come home. Like, because it was, he had already been working the whole day from the early morning, and it's already night. And I remember that he had goals, financial goals each day, for him to achieve, so that, we could live, an okay life. And so, he'd done that for years. Some days you could tell he was tired, he was drained, but, I don't ever remember him complaining, that he was tired, or, you guys, really getting on my nerves. Don't you know I worked all day? I never really heard that, eh? So, that's to honor my old man and every other, father that had to do those shifts, because, they were the first ones here, I'm not sure about your, but for a lot, they were the first ones here, and they had no option, they had no option but to get into those kind of, occupations. So, yeah, man, that's the reason, behind the story as well.
These themes you've got with your other two books and with this one, and the first one, the theme was probably around awareness of being on devices and lack of playing outside. And then your second book was about the Samoan language, going to Samoa, and the young kid not knowing the Samoan language, but his grandfather just helping him out. So that was awareness of us New Zealand born, not aware of our own language, not being brought up speaking Samoan, or our parents didn't speak Samoan to us, because that was the thing that I related to, because the dad in the second book, he didn't teach his son, but he got told off by his old man and said, no, you got to teach your son the language and stuff. But for this book, is it awareness like just tell what our dads go through? Is that?
Yeah, man. I've noticed and it's just coincidental, man. The second book was more for the children, or for there to be a story where they could resonate with not going to Samoa, or only going for the first time at this particular age and not really knowing. But I found that in fact, this story actually has two audiences. It's the child, but also the parents, because I got messages as well that parents that had read it, resonated big time with them, from an experience that they had when they went over as a child, but also them taking their own children. So because of that feedback, I feel like children and parents alike have something to pull from these stories. So for this third one, again, it is written for children, and I guess the intent for the child is, if they've ever been wondering why their dad isn't home much, or hardly ever comes home, because those are things that some kids might think about. At least if they read the story, it might give a little bit of an explanation or context as to why dad can't come to your rugby game on Saturday, because he has to do that shift, or the reason why he's not here for this birthday or this event is he's locked in. He set his shifts and he can't come out kind of thing. And so that's the intent for the child, anyways, to explain, this is why our parents work the way they work. And then secondly, for the parent, I guess it's an opportunity to talk about why they work so much, And so I really hope that fathers or even mothers read this book to their child, and it creates some sort of discussion, because it's one thing to hear it from your parent, that I work for you guys, man, and it's tough sometimes to do this, but to have it being read to or inside a children's book adds that little point of difference. Really, it adds another voice to something that you keep hearing over and over again as a child. Really, so I just hope that parents catch on. I think they will. I've had one or two people read over it in draft form, and apparently it's just nothing but emotions and tears. So that's what we're going for, man. Is doing something a little bit different, because I guess the thing that I appreciate most about this book is it's a story that I've never read. And I really want to make sure that we continue to tell stories, that aren't common. I know there's, in terms of Samoan culture and language, there's heaps of myths and legends and, other stories that are other children's resources and books that are based around that stuff. But for me, I think my avenues right down here is the second and third generation experience of a Samoan here in New Zealand, because that's what we can resonate with. I'm not saying that we can't resonate with stories from Samoa or stories about myths and legends, but this is where we are at this point in time, and so I really want to make sure these stories are authentic to 2021.
You just touched on, or you touched before, the working dynamic of the father in the new story, and that resonates with a lot of us Polynesians, or Pacific Islanders. We're working class people, and when you came on our podcast, the Back on 135, had a chat to me and Isaiah. What I got from you was really inspiring, because even though you quit your job and went into your entrepreneurship, which is what you're kind of a guy that's into. So it's probably the step above what you're reading in the book, as in what we go through as working class people. Like, can we make that next step into making our own business, being our own boss? Did that go through your mind at all when you were thinking about the themes of this book?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess that was the decision that I made, because the character actually, he's got his boots on, but also the attire he's wearing. He's got a button up blue shirt, still wearing a high vis over it, but it gives the perception that he's not just a labourer. And some of the images, he's in front of a computer, so it gives off the impression, that it's not just a factory worker, but he does have some importance in this company. And so I was mindful to paint that picture and not to go like all the way stereotype. He's in the stubbies and just the high vis, and I made sure he had at least some sort of some sort of status, because I'm but I'm also mindful, with the high vis over his blue collared shirt, still represented something that's still authentic to a lot of our experiences. As our fathers or uncles, you see the high vis hanging over the chair on the dinner table, or up up on the hook. That's high vis is something that we're all familiar with, and so I wanted to represent that, but I didn't want to make him the bottom of the food chain in terms of his in terms of his workplace. So so it was something, but I think as it progresses, man, those are the stories that we'll start to tell and encourage. But it's just opportunities after opportunities, So heaps of time for those ones as well.
When you make those kind of decisions, when you talk to Thomas about the illustration, and with what you want to perceive the dad to be, like you said, don't want the high vis showing, but do do you and Thomas have these conversations, and he throws in ideas and back and forth?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro.
And so what's the what was the process there?
Yeah, for that one, it was pretty much as I explained. I told him what kind of character that I wanted. I draw the stick figure, right, and kind of explain on the side in a little caption what he looks like. I told him what kind of face that I wanted. If you guys, you'll know this rugby player, but I wanted to go for like a familiar face, like a face that I was like, yeah, that looks like my uncle, or that looks like my cousin, or that looks like a hardworking young Samoan. So I actually don't know much about him, but I picked Nepo Lala because that looks like a Samoan guy. Like, so I picked his face. I sent it to Thomas. I was like, I want someone close to this. He had a bit of a comb back and a fade. He had a bit of a ava as well. He had a bit of a beard, and so I just wanted him to look, as similar as could be to Nepo Laulala. I don't know why him. Like, I'm not a fanboy. I don't even support the All Blacks, but in my head when I was like, who should this guy look like? He came to mind, and so yeah, man. So based it off him really. In terms of his attire and what he was doing, yeah, I was aware that I wanted to make sure that he was sitting at a desk and had some papers around just to make sure that he didn't look like an absolute labourer. Nothing against that, but I made sure that he had some sort of credibility in his work and offered something there. So yeah, man. Definitely heaps of back and forth with Thomas. I know we didn't get the face right initially. He looked probably more 45 years old than what I intended, which was around 28, 29. And so at the end of the day, we got there, and so yeah. No, I was pretty stoked with this character anyway.
That's cool, man. Yeah, so the Chief series. So, what's the long-term goal for the Chief series? How many more books are going to come out, or have you already got in your mind the storylines or the next themes of the next books?
Yeah, bro. I probably got if I'm honest, probably 6 or 7 solid ideas that will come out in book form. And these are all stories that, fingers crossed, aren't written till I write it, but definitely something I haven't seen on the shelf. And so, yeah, man, I guess the long-term goal is to, there's 2 purposes for it. First is to encourage and empower, language and culture, and to tell our, authentic story. But also Chief Book Series as a brand and as a business. There's definitely some goals and ambitions there. I looked up the other day, I don't know if Google's always right, but they said there's about 200,000 Samoans in the States. In terms of orders, there's probably only, over the last couple of days, there's probably only been 7 or 8 that have gone there. So in terms of my math that I know, I'm like, I'm real biased for my books, but I'm thinking at least there's got to be at least 10,000, 20,000 families that would read my book. I just don't know how to reach them, and that's the cool challenge that I have at the moment is how to break into into the States. I think in one of my posts there was a couple orders that went to Indianapolis, which for me blown away that anybody would from that part of the world would want a book from someone in Takanini. So I'm hopeful that that'll just go to wherever Samoans are. And there's been some interesting places, mostly on the west coast of the States, but yeah, that's the challenge over the next couple of months.
How's Australia? How's the Australia market? Because I figured that's to be the next best place, though.
Yeah, I know. Definitely in the first 2 books. If I'm honest, about 70% of the books that were sent out or purchased were from Australia. Yeah, heaps of love from there, especially Sydney and Brisbane. I'll be honest, more books have gone to Sydney and Brisbane than they have gone to Wellington or Christchurch or anything outside of Auckland, which for me is, it's an interesting observation, but it also tells me that, in terms of marketing and reach, you know, I'll probably need to get someone on board to really drive this thing properly, because I'm already doing that digital discipline thing, you know. So yeah, there's all problems that I have to try and plug, you know, over the next couple of months.